Hello, everybody. I am so excited to be talking with Miss Kathy Carroll today. We are going to be talking about practicing hospitality from the get-go. Miss Kathy, would you like to explain what that means?
Sure. First of all, I guess I should explain even who I am.
Yeah.
So I'm Kathy Carroll, and my husband Kevin and I live in Fort Worth, Texas, and we have been married 36 years. Just 2 days ago was our 36th anniversary. Hooray! We worship at the Brown Trail Church of Christ in Bedford, home of the Brown Trail School of Preaching. At Brown Trail, Kevin's an elder, and I teach in the School of Preaching Wives program. And I spent, before we had the kids, I spent 7 years teaching math and computer science in local schools. And then after we had the kids, I spent 20 of the best years of my life homeschooling as a keeper at home. So then once the kids went away to Freed-Hardeman University, I went back to teaching, this time math at the community college level. So that's part-time and one or two classes a semester when things aren't too crazy. So there you go. So that's me. And yes, what do I mean when I say hospitality from the get-go? And first of all, thank you very much, Jenna, for letting me come on and letting me talk about one of my favorite topics. I appreciate that a lot. Hospitality from the get-go, to me, really hospitality, the Greek words means, it's philoxenia, I think is how it's pronounced. I had to Google that because, I don't speak Greek, but means to receive and entertain strangers, kindness to strangers, love of strangers, to receive guests, generous to guests, to be fond of or liking guests. So that's a lot about hospitality. And to think about those really as we kind of slow down and think about them, to like having guests, to be fond of them, to receive them, to show interest in them, and kindness toward them, to receive them with love. All of these things, I believe, are crucial, and I believe they need to happen from the get-go during a church visitor's very first encounter with the congregation, be that at a church assembly or a fellowship event or whatever.
I love that. So why do you think that's so important?
Well, as you know, hospitality is important, of course, because it's a command of Scripture. We know that it's a requirement for elders, 1 Timothy 3 and Titus 1. And we also know it's an instruction to Christians in general, which applies to all of us, 1 Peter 4, Hebrews 13, Romans 12. So in general, hospitality, we know, is very important.
Yeah. So we generally think of hospitality as having people into our homes for a meal, but would you say that hospitality needs to begin much sooner than that?
Absolutely. And that's really where I'm headed with the hospitality from the get-go idea. Because as we just discussed, we know it's important, and because as the saying goes, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So first impressions matter, and they matter a lot, because as I think we have seen through the years at various times, if church visitors don't feel truly welcome during their first encounter, they may not even stick around long enough for us to actually invite them over, let alone return next week to give us a second chance.
Yeah, definitely. So what are some ways that you think we can practice hospitality through intentional interactions with visitors of the church?
Oh, wow. I think that is definitely something that we all can do and that we should do, because again, when we think about the meaning of the word hospitality, to receive strangers, okay? That's a church visitor we haven't yet met, right? Kindness to strangers. Again, church visitors we haven't yet met. We're going to be kind to them. We're going to receive them. And we're going to like having guests. Guests have been known to say, I don't think those people liked me. I don't think they really wanted us there. And some guests have reported feeling as though they were, kind of crashing a private party. And that is the opposite. That is the opposite of hospitality and the opposite of how we should be. We're trying to, our commission, the Great Commission, is to go into all the world and preach the gospel. Well, what we're talking about here is the gospel's already being preached. So we're talking about making the most of the opportunities that come to us with the visitors that show up. So I think absolutely that is so important. And another reason that I see it as so important is, we think about targeted marketing. In targeted marketing, in everyday terms, that's basically a group that is most likely to want what's being offered. Okay, well, what are we offering? What are we as Christians offering? We're offering the gospel. Again, go into all the world. So instead of go into all the world, while some people are doing that, but yet we have opportunities that come to us. And we want to make the most of every opportunity. So I think that's really important. I think another reason, I have a lot of reasons. I think another reason that I think that is so important is because one thing we already know about every single church visitor, every single person that visits our assemblies, they're already there. They're already, for some reason, their own reason, interested. They are self-motivated. So, they got up, they got ready, they got in their car, they got over here for some reason, even if that reason is only grandma's birthday. But they will hear the gospel preached if they attend a church assembly. And so here they are on our doorstep, and we can make the most of that opportunity. And I see that as so important too, because we know they're interested to some degree for some reason, but what we don't know is, are they a lost seeker or are they a saved saint? And that's important. If they are lost, they need us. If they're saved, we need them. They may be the Bible class teacher we've been looking for, or the song leader, or, the future elder, deacon, worker, teacher, whatever. Either they need us or we need them. And I'm convicted that really it's both. We all need each other, right?
Yeah.
So all of those reasons I think are so important. And I think even when our visitors are from out of town, they are still souls who will spend eternity somewhere. And they're still souls who will be influenced for good or ill by what may be a very brief interaction with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, has there been any research done on what types of things influence first-time guests and other church visitors?
Yes, actually, there's probably been a lot. The research that I'm familiar with is compiled in a book by Tom Rainer called Becoming a Welcoming Church. And that book is based in part on hundreds of surveys of church visitors within Christendom who visited, both those who stayed and became members of wherever they visited and those who left and never returned. And so he and his team, I guess, did all of this research and then compiled, because it talks to a lot of people about how they make their decisions. And now I need to go ahead and say, now that I've mentioned a book, I can't vouch for everything in the book. The only book I ever fully endorse is the Bible. But that said, there are numerous helpful insights for anyone wanting to improve their evangelism by making the most of their opportunities with visitors.
Nice. So, what are some common reasons that first-time guests say they haven't returned?
Oh, these are so sad to me. They're so sad to me. Um, Number one is unfriendly church members. And I
Hmm.
think that's so sad. I think Jesus died on the cross for these souls and they leave and never return because I wasn't friendly. Oh, that's just the worst. That's the worst. Um, Also, maybe worse than the worst, was reported members left and never returned because visitors left and never returned, excuse me, because members told them they were in, even begin to, think about what all is wrong with that. We love our spots maybe, but we'd probably be a lot better off and know our own members better if we moved around a little more and we we're the bride of Christ, not the bride of our pew. So I think we should not get too married to our pew. um, the next thing, and there's a lot in the book he lists, but these are some of the very top ones, was a lack of information or some kind of insider language. It always makes me think about like a college student or even high school or junior high student going to a new campus for the first time. They've got to find the right building. They've got to find the right room. There's a lot of information they need. And so, we talk about people looking like tourists because they're looking around trying to figure out where to go. And when visitors come and it's too hard to figure those things out and they can't figure out where to go, it's very uncomfortable to be wandering around feeling clueless, right? And so they say that if there's not good signage and they can't figure out where they're supposed to be, or if it's all sort of in lingo or acronyms that they don't even really know what's going on, then they don't feel comfortable. And if they don't feel comfortable, they don't stay.
Mhm. Well, on the positive side of that, what are some reasons that people, first-time visitors, did return to those churches?
Oh, yes. Let's talk about the positive. That's a much happier topic for me. Um, One of the most common ones was someone asked a guest to sit with them, and that is extremely welcoming, right? Hey, would you like to sit with me? And I have personally found even better than saying, hey, would you like to sit with me? Because anytime I ever say that, what's their first question? Well, I don't know. Where are you sitting? Because maybe they really are eager beavers and they want to be on the front row, or maybe they're nervous and want to be, on the very back row. So what I have found to be the most helpful is to say, hey, where would you like to sit? I'll be happy to join you. And that has always been well received and, appreciated. And sometimes we find guests who are already seated by the time we come in from a separate Bible class or whatever. And if I see a guest sitting by themselves, I will just try to go and say, oh, is this taken? May I join you? Welcome. I haven't met you, et cetera, et cetera. And that is always seemed to be well received and appreciated. The next most common reason I think guests said they did return was people introduced themselves to guests. And I realize I'm an extrovert, so it's easier for me than some people, but a lot of people say, well, I don't know what to say. But we all know our names and we all know how to say, hi, this is my name. So that's something. But that was a big deal to people, that they felt welcomed because people introduced themselves.
Mhm.
Another really important thing is they said they felt their kids were safe and happy. And every parent knows when they're looking for a church home or they're looking at churches at all, as much as they care about what they are looking for themselves, their number one thing is to take care of their children. So if their kids are safe and their kids are happy, then chances are they'll come back. But if the parents say, oh, that was so wonderful, we learned so much, and the adults were so nice, but the kids didn't feel welcome around the other kids, they may not come back because it's hard. No parent wants to try to worship week in and week out at a place where their children don't feel comfortable. They want to go to worship where their kids are eager and excited to go because they feel comfortable and because they're meeting new people and making new friends. So every age group has a part to play.
Definitely, definitely. So, what are some of the most common challenges that people face with showing hospitality, and how can we kind of overcome those challenges?
Interesting. One of the greatest joys, in my opinion, in the church family is the joy and support of Christian fellowship, which is a wonderful, wonderful blessing. However, sometimes when we think about being warm and welcoming to our guests, we have to be careful not to be so excited and interested and engaged, fellowshipping each other,
Mm-hmm.
that we fail to see the guests who have come in. And so, and the author in the book talks about that a fair amount too. Calls them holy huddles, because it is really easy to do because we love each other and we care about each other. And how was your thing you had last week? That surgery or whatever that so and so. There's a lot we want to talk about with each other, but we have to remember to be cognizant of the fact. And so, in my mind, I and we talk about this sometimes, kind of eyes up and who else as members of our church family. And even you and I, who just, recently met visually, we have phone numbers. We can contact each other later. I can call you up and say, how was that thing we were praying about? But visitors, this is our chance. It might be our one chance. So we want to make the most of it. So hey, did you see those visitors up there by where the Parkers sit? Or did you see that family that came in, whatever. And we try to take each other or send each other to go and meet them. And, sometimes there's a lot of different ways that we can do that, but that is one of the best ways that we have found to address that challenge, is to help each other. And that helps us make us ourselves aware. And sometimes, somebody will come up to a group of people where they're talking and say, oh, hey, did you guys see? And then, you walk up to a group of 6 people and say, hey, did you guys see that new person over there? And then they'll go, oh yeah, we didn't see him. Good. Off they go. And so we can really help each other because we have a big auditorium. I don't know about everybody else, but our auditorium is very big and very spread out. And so it really does help us to point those things out to other people so that we can go and make those introductions and those connections.
Yeah. I feel like that's a good way for introverts too, if you're maybe not so extroverted, to go with a buddy and introduce yourself. Are there any other ways that you have maybe for introverts to go introduce themselves to new people and show hospitality?
Yes, as a matter of fact, because I have a lot of introvert friends. And that's one thing. Interestingly, my introvert friends, sometimes one of the best ways they help is to point out the visitors to their extrovert friends.
Mhm.
And sometimes they'll say things like, if you'll go with me, I'll go. Or if you'll go, when I get there, you could introduce me. And I say, absolutely, or whatever. There's lots of ways to do it. Sometimes, I tell them, hey, bring a buddy, you guys come together, let's strengthen numbers or whatever. Another thing that I think are just little quick, easy, in my opinion, sort of ways. If you're most introverts, it's because, I don't know what to say. After I say my name, I don't know what to say. And so one thing that is helpful is just to sit on the pew beside them or in front of them and just give a quick hello, and then if they want to say hi or whatever. Another easy thing, in my opinion, I'm an extrovert, I get it, these are easy for me, but that have been helpful to other introverts I know and love, is to hand them a church bulletin or announcement sheet. Most congregations have some sort of bulletin or kids paper or notes or whatever. Hand them one of those and ask if they have any questions, or have you been able to locate the water fountains yet, or whatever. Do they need any help finding anything, or things along those lines? And other things, really, even if an introvert never says a word, just to smile and nod, really sing out when it comes singing time, because that's really sad. If the visitors come and the singing is more discouraging than encouraging, that can be a problem. But when the singing is very enthusiastic and encouraging, even if the introvert never speaks to the visitor directly, just that alone is very helpful for how people view the church. It really is. Another thing about introverts is, or just sort of hindrances that I think we can help, and that is, some people say, but I'll be so embarrassed if I go and talk to someone and I find out they're already a member. I'll be so embarrassed. And then I think, you know what? If they're already members, no problem. They're family, and you need to know your family, right? We need to know our family, so let's go ahead. And the other thing I've said is, just in case, if we're concerned about that, we could always say something really neutral, such as, "Good morning, I'm Kathy, and I'm still working on learning all the names." And then they can say, "Oh, me too, I've been here 10 years." Or, "Well, the reason you don't know mine is I just got here," or whatever. But you just kind of admit up front. One of the things that I used to tell my daughter, who was very natural born introvert, and I said, if you're not talking because you're nervous, chances are the person that's not talking to you, and therefore you take the first step, they're going to be grateful. They'll be so glad that you were brave and they didn't have to be. So there's a lot of things I think we can do to help each other. So
Absolutely. So, what are some good questions that we should be asking guests when they arrive?
Oh, I love that one. And one thing about that, it ties back to the introvert thing, and that is, introverts often tell me, well, I don't know what to say. But the thing is, if we sort of are armed with a mental list of good questions, then we don't actually have to do the talking. All we have to do is let them do the talking. So kind of takes some of the pressure off. So the number one first, and it's so obvious, but it's important, and that is to get their name. We want to get their name, and if at all possible, use it in a sentence a few times to try to put it in the head, right? Because that's hard. Names are hard. I've never met anybody that says, "Oh, learning names is so easy for me." I've never met that person. But to get their name, to make note of it. Like, I used to jot it on a piece, the bulletin. I would write it down on the bulletin. Or now I even put it in an app in my phone as quick as I can before I forget. But if we can use that name in their hearing, or when we introduce them to our friend, or use it next week, that's, nothing turns a stranger into a friend like learning their name. And nothing makes them feel more welcome when they return than being greeted by their name. So those things really help. Where are you from? It's really basic, obvious question, but it tells us, are they traveling or do they live in our area? That's just kind of helps us to see, maybe we gonna need to follow up. And but if they're just passing through, I live in the Metroplex in DFW, and so some people are on vacation, and maybe they'll come back next year or whatever, but we want to be a good experience for them as well. And we want to represent Christ, right? We are the aroma of Christ, and we want to do a good job of that regardless of whether they are local or traveling. Another question I like to ask is, have you been here before? Because, sometimes I'm out of town, or I don't catch every visitor every week or whatever, and I guess nobody does. But repeat visitors, those are even more serious, more interested. And, talk about targeted marketing. Those are people who are hungry for the gospel, and they are hungry for the good news. And the good news is we have the good news, so we can share that with them, right? Another question is, I often ask, where do you normally worship, or what other places have you visited? If they say, we're visiting around, where do you normally worship, or what other places have you visited? That helps us a lot to kind of get a feel for where they are spiritually. Some people are looking for a church, any church, and they will name every type of church you've ever heard of. And they just started near their house and they just keep going. But we want to know that tells us maybe something about where we should start with them and where they are on their Christian walk, right? Another question that helps us find out where they are on their Christian walk and how we can help advance that along is if we ask them, so do you have any questions? Do you have any questions about what we do here or why we do it? Those kinds of things. That helps us to kind of know where they are, and also helps us to know what sort of things maybe we need to make more clear, Let's see, what else? Another thing that several of us at our congregation have found very helpful is to get their phone number, and we're not trying to be stalkers and scare people. Oh yeah, but it's more in the form of, hey, we're having a special event soon. We're having VBS soon. We're having this guest speaker. We're having whatever soon. And if you give me your number, I'll be happy to send you the details. Or, hey, we also offer services. All the lessons are videoed and they're archived online. And so if you'd like, I could send you a link to that for further study or, whatever, good resources. But then once we have those numbers, we can follow up and encourage and invite to Bible study or send links to lessons, et cetera, to really try to help in their spiritual journey, in their walk.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any other tips for evangelism inside of the church building?
Oh, I have so many thoughts. I think probably my first one would be to always remember, as much as we love all of the dear souls, our dearest friends. Kevin and I have been worshiping, getting close to 30 years in our same congregation. We raised our kids with some of those are some of the best people in the world, and we love them dearly. But at any given moment, the most important souls within our auditorium, within our church building, are the ones that are lost, right? Kevin's other elder friends, they could keel over of a heart attack and they're probably going to be in heaven. But if we have visitors who have not yet come to find what they're seeking for, they are lost, and they're my top priority at that moment. Because I can call my friends later, right? We can go to lunch later, but those visitors, that's a fleeting opportunity. Paul talks about, you wanted to do good to me, but you lacked opportunity. But when we have opportunity, I always want to make the most of it. So there's that. And if we find out that there is someone who is still seeking the gospel, seeking the truth, then, we can invite them to a Bible study. We can try to help arrange one. We can, if all we do is alert the deacons or the elders or our husbands or the preachers or whatever, that's a step in the right direction. The hardest tip for me, which I'm going to tell you because it's good for me to remind myself, and that is most visitors seem to purposefully arrive early because, probably because they don't really know for sure where they're going and they're entering an unknown. So they want to get there early and figure out, where do I park and where do I go and all that stuff. And so if I'm coming in late, that's a missed opportunity, right? And if I come in just in the nick of time when they say turn to page 37, again, I've missed that opportunity. But if I can be there earlier, and of course everybody else that can be there earlier, that's a really good time. So to be early is to be on time for welcoming visitors who sometimes come early. And another reason that's so important is because what do we know about visitors most often? They very often leave very quickly, right? And I think one of the reasons they do that is because, and it's the same reason we stay for an hour. I always feel sorry for the deacon on lockup at Brown Trail, because we're there an hour later and there's fellowship going on and he's flicking the lights going, there could be a storm coming. You never know. You might want to go home, But the visitors leave. We stay because we're so comfortable there. the visitors leave. Why? Because they're not in their comfort zone. So they leave about as quickly as they can. Therefore, to catch them on the front end helps make sure we catch them at all, and maybe helps them be more comfortable to stay a little longer. So that's another good reason that being earlier is good. And so, if you're thinking, that's what I sometimes it's really good to sit at the back. When we were raising children, we sat, front row. We wanted them to be able to focus and see and participate and all that. But now our kids are grown. It really helps us to sit at the back a lot, because we can look around the crowd, right? And we can spot the visitors and even members who are absent and check on them. But I have been in services before, like during the announcements, and I'm sitting between my husband and my daughter, and there's 3 different sets of visitors, and we pick and say, okay, I'm going that way, you go that way, you go that way, because that's where you can see them. And I love sitting on the front row. Don't get me wrong. I love sitting on the front row, but when I'm on the front row, I can't see them. Mm-hmm. And so I've been a Christian long enough that I'm going to be able to worship from the front row or from the back row. And my kids are grown enough now that they can worship from anywhere, and I don't choose their seats anymore. But visitors, it really helps me to be at the back, and so I do that. And we have been known at Brown Trail to text each other from time to time and say, hey, there's a lot of visitors back here, be sure and hurry back or whatever. And sometimes some of our elders will get up during the closing song and go to the back and try to, catch those who are racing out the door or whatever. Another thing that really helps is when I mentioned, noticing members who are absent or whatever, to better recognize the visitors. The easiest way to do that is to what? Get to know all our members, right? The better we know each other, the better we can notice who's not usually there. So even if I accidentally introduce myself to someone who says, oh, I'm already a member, terrific. I need to get to know you better. We're family, right? So, but the better we can know our own members, the easier time we'll have to spot our visitors and know that, they're there, so we can try to go catch them.
Absolutely. Now, I hate to end this conversation. I've really enjoyed it, but I think we only have 1 minute left. So I just want to thank you so much for.
Oh, no.
Yes, I know. Oh, but thank you so much for talking today. I have really enjoyed this. I felt a little bit convicted myself. So thank you for taking the time to talk about this topic.
Absolutely. I would just close with 2 things. One is, you don't really need to read a book full of statistics. All we have to really do is remember the golden rule, right? Because we were new at one point. And then Ephesians 5:15 and 16, be careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity. Yes. Thank you, Jennifer.